Hey Waffle Gang, I do hope you're well. My name is Mark and today we're checking out some more Reddit stories, and if you do love a Reddit story, why not consider hitting that like, subscribe, maybe that notification bell too, and let's crack on with today's first story. Much love guys. Now today's first story comes from childfree runaway from the TrueOffMyChest subreddit, and it says, I run away because I'm child free and I feel like my fiance was trying to get me pregnant. I've 26 female, always known I didn't want kids. From a young age, even when adults asked me how many kids I wanted, my answer was always none. I didn't even know what child-free meant, but I always was. As I got older, I realized what it was. I just didn't feel that unconditional love that's supposed to come with having children. Could I love a child? What if? I can't be a mother because I don't know what that kind of love feels like. That's how I've spent my whole life. Then I met my fiance, 34 male, 2 years ago, and he was my first everything, and I finally experienced romantic love. But when it came to kids, I still knew I couldn't do it from the beginning. I told him that having kids was off the table. He said he was fine with that because he never really liked kids, so it wasn't a problem for him. 5 months ago, he proposed and I said yes. We moved in together and everything was perfect. We were planning our wedding slowly, no rush. That was until his sister had a baby 2 months ago, and my fiance instantly fell in love with his nephew and was there every step of the way. He bathed him, changed him, napped with him. It seemed normal, I guess, so I didn't mind. 3 weeks ago, we went to his sister's house for lunch. My fiance was mowing her lawn when she asked me to watch the baby for a couple of minutes. I tried to refuse, but she looked so down that I agreed. I thought that she would just put him in a stroller or something, but she plopped him into my arms and went upstairs. I panicked. I'd never held such a small baby before, and I was terrified I might drop him. 5 minutes in, he started crying. At first it was fine, but then he started screaming at the top of his lungs, how can such a tiny baby be so loud? I was almost in tears myself. I stood up as gently as I could and went outside where my fiance was. I yelled at him to come grab the baby from me. He came over, took a picture of me holding the baby, and instead of taking him from me, he started giving me tips on how to calm him down. He pushed the baby closer to my chest and said, he really suits you. I was on the verge of a panic attack. My hands trembling, I was even more scared to drop him. I yelled, if you don't grab him, I'm putting him on the floor. He got angry, called me a bitch, and grabbed the baby. I couldn't handle it anymore, so I took an Uber home. He came home around midnight, showered and went to sleep on the couch. The next morning, he was already gone when I woke up, and he didn't come home until 3 a.m. I told him we needed to talk, but he just said, tomorrow, and went back to the couch. The next day when I came home from work, he was waiting for me. We sat down and he apologized for how he reacted, saying he didn't know what got into him. I asked a question I already knew the answer to. I said, do you want to have kids now? He said, I don't know, I just love him so much, you know. I said, well, that's normal, isn't it? He said, I guess, but do you really feel that against having kids? You don't even have to get pregnant or give birth. We can adopt. I talked about how scary pregnancy and childbirth were for me, especially because of how hard it was for my mum. She almost died giving birth to me due to complications, and she had to have an emergency hysterectomy. I said, that's not the only reason, and you know that. You know how I feel about not knowing if I could love a kid unconditionally. He said, I know, but you've learned to love me, right? You can love a child too. Listen, we don't have to agree on this now. We can get married first and then revisit it. Please don't shut it down immediately. Then he started to cry and hugged me, so I dropped it. But deep down, I knew I couldn't be a mum. I know myself, and honestly, I felt betrayed by him. I thought I'd eventually start resenting him, but I hoped we could get past this. Then he started doing some strange things. He changed his wallpaper to a picture of me holding the baby. He started calling me Mama. He wanted to start having unprotected sex, and he even began touching my belly when he thought I was asleep. I have fertility issues that I've never treated because what was the point? My period is irregular, but mostly pain-free, so I never bothered to do anything about it. But when he suggested I go see a doctor to see what's going on with that, I panicked. It felt like he was trying to get me pregnant. An abortion is still illegal in my country we're living in, so I left and I told him my mum fell in the shower and broke her leg. A lie, and I wanted to stay with her for a couple of days to make sure she was okay. He said that was fine and I waited for him to go to work. Then I grabbed important documents, some clothes, sentimental things, my dog, and I left. I don't know if what I did was right. I'm starting to doubt myself. Maybe he just wanted me to be healthy. Maybe he was just cuddling me or liked that picture. But I can't shake the feeling that something was wrong. He hasn't realized that I left to never coming back. He just questioned why I took the dog, jokingly. I didn't tell anyone, I just told my mum I missed her. Maybe I should go back and pretend everything's okay. But something about him feels off now, and I just don't know anymore. I'm sorry if this is all over the place and extremely long. I just can't talk to anyone about this, and it's eating me alive. I probably left some things out of context, so sorry about that too. That whole OP ending up holding the baby just felt like a setup from the very beginning. The sister conveniently needing to disappear right then, leaving someone who's never held a baby suddenly stuck with a screaming infant. And suddenly the fiance's whipping his phone out and taking a picture saying, oh, he really suits you, and pushing the baby closer to her to try and get her to soothe it. Then you got the wallpaper, the mama comments, and everything's already changed in his head. And certainly, I know OP's getting out of the situation, but when he was talking about, let's get married first, and in the words of Admiral Akbar, it's a trap, get your ass out of there. But people were asking OP questions below that. Someone said, why doesn't she just break up with him? OP said, you're probably right, but I always run away. I can't handle confrontation. I run away instead of moving out like a normal person when I was 18. I don't handle confrontation well. Don't get me wrong, I'm no pushover. I'll stand my ground and would not back down, but I hate having to talk to people face to face or giving explanations. I also didn't talk to my boss. I told him the same lie, so he gave me time off, but I really wanted to talk to him because he's the one who brought me with him when he was promoted, so I feel I owe him an explanation too. I think if I talk to my boss, something can be arranged because it's like binational, and I was in the office in my country and moved to the office in his country. Gladly, he was never in my home country. He has a super demanding job, so he doesn't even take vacations, so it's nearly impossible for him to find me. Even if he tries, I'm not even in the capital or near there. On how she didn't like children as a child, Opie says, I was horribly apathetic growing up. I didn't like nor dislike anything or anyone I knew I was capable of love because I love my family, but romantic love is so different, I guess. I also didn't get along with my peers when I was little. I was always talking to adults. Kids annoyed me, so I think I was always a little bit of a hater. I don't know. I was never scared of being alone. I used to have a neighbor, and she was a retired architect who lived alone with her plants. She just let me go visit her because I never touched anything, so she liked me. She was always my role model. I was doubting myself because everyone, except my dad, always told me I was difficult to please and I asked too much. I'm barely an appropriate human. How can I teach someone else to be one? Someone says about her ADHD diagnosis and says, I usually don't talk about it because my mum told me, is that just an excuse for being lazy all your life? And I tried to talk to her about it, so I ignored the diagnosis after I spent most of my life without it. Opie also says the thought of going through pregnancy makes me want to pass away in all honesty. And then says, I went outside to call him. When he saw I had the baby, he took his phone out of his pocket and took the picture. And then said if they plan to leave the child with OP. Opie said, I don't think they plan, but it was zero help anyway. I don't think his sister would have agreed to something like this. She's really a serious woman and she doesn't take shit from anyone. Yet again, we do things we wouldn't normally do for our siblings. Opie adds that I can't blame the sister. She's a single mum and is doing everything on her own. Her birth had some complications and she's really doing the best she can. I just want to clarify that even though I said it, I wasn't planning on leaving the baby on the floor, and when he suggested unprotected sex, I just looked at him and walked away. I wasn't going to put him on the floor. I'm not that insane. If she thinks she could be a good co-parent. Opie says he has a really demanding job. He tried to say he would help a lot, but he is barely home. When is he going to do these things? At 11 p.m.? On why she didn't break up with him after he called her a bitch, and then says, honestly, I wanted to break up with him then too. And he was giving me the cold shoulder and it pissed me off so much, but people always said I was too mean, too cold, and too unforgiving. So I tried to fix things. Opie adds a series of other comments saying, why would I make the life of this child miserable just to see if I might love them? Also says because I'm foreign, everything is on his name and I think he owns the apartment. On if he would sabotage birth control, and says I want to say he's not capable, but after everything that's happened, I'm not so sure anymore. Someone says take a pregnancy test in case he's already got there. Opie says I didn't even think about that. Opie also says is the age gap actually a big deal? My older sisters weren't particularly thrilled about it when I talked to them. Also said I just need to pull myself together and make uncomfortable decisions. Also says I'm definitely ending things now. I just need to mentally prepare for whatever shit show that's going to be. And the final one said, this is actually heartbreaking, but you're right. He loves someone, I'm not. So 10 days after this, OP comes in with her first update and says, so I'm going to try and make this as chronologically accurate and as concise as possible. If something is unclear, I'll clarify in the comments. The first thing I did after my last post was get a blood pregnancy test. It was negative. That night I also spoke to my mum. I wasn't comfortable sharing every single detail, so I left some things out. But she told me she supports me and that I can stay with her for as long as I need. I also talked to my sisters and they admitted they never liked the idea of me dating someone so much older. But they didn't want to push me because they know me. If they did, I'd probably get angry, distance myself and become even more dependent on him. I apologized for overreacting at everything and assured them they should never hesitate to tell me if something feels weird or wrong. I called my boss and gave him a more family-friendly version of the story. He was absolutely livid, not only with him but also with me for not telling him sooner. He's like my work dad and was the one who requested I join him. He said he didn't bring me to a foreign country without intending to take care of me. He promised to pull some strings to get me in a position at the office in my country since my former position was already filled. He also told me that if I wanted to get my things back, I could go back on a Saturday and he would accompany me. After thinking about it, I decided to go back. It might seem silly, but I had a lot of money on K-pop photo cards, albums, mangas, and I didn't want to start my collection from scratch. I spent a couple of days with friends and visiting family, realizing how lonely and isolated I felt in a foreign country, even though it's not that far from home. I knew I could never leave my family like that again. Even my dog seemed happier, spending every afternoon cuddling with my mum. I also visited my father's grave. I always hated cemeteries and avoided them, but I needed him in that moment. I went alone, brought fresh flowers, cleaned a little, and just sat there talking to him. I told him none of this would have happened if he hadn't passed away. I cried a lot, then laughed like a crazy person. I ended up staying for about 3 hours, but it felt so healing. I also went to my mum's gynecologist, and she said it's also possible to get a tubal ligation, especially considering my health issues. She warned me it could take about 6 months, but I was okay with the wait. So we started the process. I felt so free after that appointment and just so much happier being home. I didn't even think about my ex until he messaged me asking about my mum. I told him she was doing better and that I'd be back on Saturday. I decided to talk to him face to face since I was already going back to collect my things. On Friday afternoon, my sister lent me her car and I drove back. It's almost a 12-hour drive, but with breaks. It took about 14 hours. I went straight to my boss's house, and when I arrived around 9 a.m., he asked me to have breakfast with him and his family. Afterwards, he and his son came with me to my ex's house to pack up my things. I even got some of my favorite plants. They made fun of my taste in music, and we finished in about an hour and a half. Afterwards, I went to my ex's sister's house. I needed to know if the whole baby incident had been a setup. I knew she didn't work on Saturday, so I went to her house. Luckily, she was home and invited me in. We sat in awkward silence for a moment until I asked her, "Did your brother ask you to make me hold the baby?" She said, "What? No, why? What even happened that day? When I went downstairs, you weren't there, and he said you got sick and had to leave." I said, "What did he tell you exactly?" She said, "He said you had a panic attack because of fertility issues and holding the baby was triggering." I told him that didn't sound like you, but he said, "How are you supposed to know more about my fiance than I do?" Then he left. I said, "What the actual fuck?" She said, "Yeah. He even said you wanted to babysit and go to the park as a couple with a baby. But I told him he was crazy if he thought I'd let him use my baby like that. He got mad at me and didn't speak to me for a couple of days." Then I laughed and explained what actually happened. She was furious, so mad she started crying. She apologized for leaving me with the baby, and and I apologized for saying I was going to put the baby on the floor, clarifying that I wasn't actually going to do that. She said she was genuinely considering going no contact with him because his behavior was creepy and she feared he might do something to the baby. I decided to tell her I was leaving her brother, and she said she understood. We hugged and she said she'd miss me. I went back to my boss's house to wait for my ex to get home. I told him to text me when he got off work. I was a nervous wreck. I almost threw up. My boss's wife made me chamomile tea and stayed by my side, rubbing my back. Honestly, loved that woman. The whole family, really. My boss and his son came with me to his apartment. One thing about my boss, he's a softie, but he's huge. He's 195 centimeters, 6'3", and about 130 kilos, 286 pounds, and his son is basically a carbon copy of him, so I felt pretty safe. When my ex got home, he smiled at me, then saw my boss and his son. He asked me what was going on. I said, I'm breaking up with you. You're clearly going through a baby fever phase, and I don't want any part of that. He said, what do you mean, breaking up? We can't break up. We love each other. I said, no, you love the idea of me being pregnant with your child, and that's not going to happen. He tried to hug me, but my boss grabbed his shoulder and said, why don't you sit here with me? He said, I can't lose you. I love you. You're my soulmate. I can't live without you. If you leave me, I'll die. I'd rather never have kids than lose you. I'll even get a vasectomy, but please stay. What will our families think? You can't just break off the engagement like this. I said, first off, this isn't a telenovela, so calm down. Second, I never even told my family we were engaged, and I've already told them we broke up. He said, what about the dog? You can't just take her. I said, what dog? The dog I've had since I was 17. That's my dog, and she barely tolerates you. Trust me, she's much happier with my mum. He started sobbing and tried to speak, but I couldn't understand him. My boss's son couldn't choose a worse moment to laugh and asked, you really didn't tell your family? I just said, I never found the right moment, you know. My ex calmed down a little and he said he'd never let me go. He still loved me, blah, blah, blah. I felt a little threatened when he said something like, I'll find you and make you fall in love with me again. I told him good luck with that, but seriously, we're not in a telenovela. Enough with the drama. I gave him the ring back, and he threw it at me, though it didn't hit me. I said, I hope you find someone who wants kids, but I also hope you get psychological help, and we left. I spent the night at my boss's house, and the next morning, I went back home. I spent the rest of Sunday sleeping because I had a bit of a fever. That's me, the girl who gets emotional fevers. I helped my mum with her business today, and my therapy session is on the 13th. Due to how things went in the office, I'll start again in March. They kind of fired me to rehire me. Thank you so much for helping me see how crazy the whole situation was. I feel so happy and so light now. I forgot how much I love having my family around. I probably won't update again unless something crazy happens, but yeah, thank you people, especially women of Reddit. I did to clarify a couple of things. One, some people said and even messaged me to tell me I never loved my fiance and I'm a horrible, cold person. I did love him, and I think I still do. I had a whole script memorized to talk to him about his sister's baby. He wanting unprotected sex. Well, I ran away, but I panicked and forgot everything and decided to just be blunt and direct. 2. I didn't take 2 men to make fun of him while I broke up with him. That's actually insane. They came with me because I didn't feel safe with my ex alone. 3 people saying I need therapy. I know. I already made the appointment and it's on the 13th. 4 about the tube ligation. It's nothing confirmed yet, but I tried to get a bilateral scalp-injectomy. Someone here actually let me know what that was. I wanted a hysterectomy, but that's basically impossible according to my doctor. 5. Some people told me this sounds fake. I wish, but no is real. Maybe it's the way I worded or because English is not my first language. I don't know, but there's that. Hope you had a few more comments before and next update and said, my mum has security cameras already, so I'm feeling confident. Also, I don't think he's just going to leave everything to follow me, not even knowing where I am. Also says, just because we watch telenovelas don't mean we need to replicate them. And says, I deleted all my social media and changed my phone number. Also says, honestly, I'm sad, but I'm not. But then I'm sad again. It's a weird feeling. I don't think they can really just watch him without cause, but my boss's wife advised me to go to the police station before going out of the country again to let me know I was leaving willingly just in case. And no, he doesn't post much on social media, just big events, birthday, anniversaries, and that kind of stuff. Then about going to therapy again, saying I had my first session on the 13th. I know it's going to be a long road, but it felt so good being able to tell someone everything without being judged, and even someone who can give you advice. And then OP says one final time, I have some issues I need to work on honestly. So then it was 9 months later that OP updates again and said, hello, it's me again. It's been a long time and I don't know if people still care much about all this anymore, but I feel like this is the last thing I need to do to fully close this chapter of my life. First of all, I'm officially sterile. After fighting with doctors for months and convincing them that my imaginary future husband won't mind not having any biological children, and I got a bilateral salpingectomy, so no more kids for me. Yay. Work-wise, I'm doing great. The person who replaced me in my old position moved to another department, so they offered me my job back and I accepted it. I do have to travel to the neighboring country again, which makes me a little anxious, but it's only 1 week every 3 months, and I get to stay with my old boss and his family, so that's nice. My therapist is amazing, honestly. I loved her. She helped me realize my issues go way deeper than what happened with my ex. Speaking of him, I found out through my boss's son. Let's call him Alan, that he's expecting a child with someone. Alan showed me pictures from a gender reveal party with him and a girl, but I didn't see his sister there, so I don't know if she's still no contact with him or something. Anyway, I'm glad he got what he wanted. He wasn't really a bad person, just someone who got carried away with his feelings and did some bad things. I'm not defending him though. I just chose to move on and hope we both grow as people. We also started seeing someone 2 months ago. We're taking things really slow, but he's so patient, caring, and loving, and being with him makes me feel so good. But I'm still scared of being intimate, even though I technically can't have kids anymore. Some of that anxiety is still hanging around, I guess. We talked about me being child-free, and he said he is too, and he actually got a vasectomy when he was 21. I told him what happened with my ex, and he's really supportive and doesn't pressure or rush me to do anything I'm not ready for. Anyway, I just wanted to give an update and let you all know that I'm fine and happy, and a lot of people were really worried about me. And I appreciate the concern and wanted to let you know that I'm moving on, and this is probably my last update. I wanted to keep doing better and close this chapter completely. I think I'll delete this account at some point too. OP adds some final comments and says, I just hope he is an actual good father now that he has a baby on the way. I'm really trying to be a bigger person and not talk shit about him because both of them look quite happy in the pictures. But from what Alan showed me, she's 24 years old and that makes me feel a funny, weird feeling. But I hope they're good for each other or whatever. The final commenter says, I honestly pray that she is fine and wanted this baby. And I hope he'd be a good dad. He wasn't a completely awful partner, but I really only care that she's okay because a woman having a baby you didn't want must be top 3 worst things that can happen to you. OP saying he's not a bad person. His behavior in this story says otherwise, in my opinion. However, I'm super glad that OP said that, they was getting some therapy and things are moving in the right direction for them and therapy is working well for them. I've spoken a couple of times about me doing therapy recently and, I hold my hands up. I find it really interesting. I'd probably say more interesting than healing at the moment, or maybe it's healing in some ways. I don't know. But I find it really fascinating, the therapist talking about, how the brain works in certain situations and putting links together that I don't pick up on. As I said, probably in one of my last videos recently, there's a lot of talk about my sort of hypervigilance, if you like. And in some ways, I never kind of see it as a bad thing anyway. I kind of like it. But therapists are saying, if you're constantly in that state, though, you're never shutting down. And I've told her some of the crazy shit from my past and growing up in the area that I did and some of the people around there. And, she's saying, I can see why you're like that. Just remember being in my youth and, sitting in my bedroom playing a game or whatever, and then you hear a police siren in the area, and immediately, we're all nosy bastards around there. It's like seeing the fucking Batman symbol out the window. You run out straight away. We've got to go and see what's going on. Or you hear a real faint shout in the distance, and it's coming from an area where trouble could be, so you're instantly on high alert. Anyway, I'm talking fluff again. I will keep you updated on that because I find it really interesting myself, and I know some of you have as well, and you're glad that I got into therapy. But anyway, thank you so much for being here today, getting involved in the stories. What did you think of this one? Let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. And don't forget, at the very end of the video, there'll be a playlist there that you can click on, and it will automatically scroll through all those videos for you. Thank you so much for being here today. You are absolutely amazing. Stay amazing, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care, and much love.